your work, from what I've read, you look at a range of or have looked at a range of dietary patterns. I know you focused on the portfolio diet, but I mentioned before Nordic, I believe Mediterranean, DASH. There's all of these kind of different dietary patterns that your work has looked at. How would you go about explaining this, the commonalities between these dietary patterns, and perhaps what are some of the important distinctions or differences between them, particularly the ones that people may not be familiar with, like DASH or the Nordic for folks, in Australia or in Canada or USA?
I'll start with explaining what some of them are. So the DASH diet, it stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So as you imagine by its name, it's a dietary pattern that was created to help lower blood pressure. So this dietary pattern, it's high in fruits and vegetables. It's high in low-fat dairy. It is also quite high in legumes and nuts, as well as lean meats. And it reduces ultra-processed foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, and high-sodium foods. From what we've seen from the literature, from the trials, it does result in significant reductions in blood pressure and a number of other risk factors as well, like LDL cholesterol. And then in the cohorts, we also see that it's associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Next, for the Nordic diet, which some people may be less familiar with. So as its name implies, it's from the Nordic countries. So Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. So it's a dietary pattern based on healthy traditional Nordic foods that's in line with the Nordic recommendations. So it's an overall healthy dietary pattern, but it has specific foods that are kind of core to it. So for example, for grains, things like rye, oats, and barley are a big component. For fruits and vegetables, you'll see a lot of berries, a lot of root vegetables, and then cruciferous vegetables like cabbage. It's fairly high in, it recommends like legumes, a lot of seafood, and low-fat dairy. And then the main oils or fat sources are from rapeseed or canola oil, and some nuts.
How would that dietary pattern differ to a sort of Mediterranean or a traditional Mediterranean diet as defined within the literature?
There's definitely some overlap between the Mediterranean diet as well as all the other dietary patterns. They are quite plant predominant. I think some of the main differences may be like the fat source, like it's focusing more on canola rather than olive oil, just because that's, a traditional food that would grow in that region compared to olive oil. And as well as more focus on whole grains like rye and oats that may not grow in the Mediterranean region, and then different types of fruits and vegetables as well.
Okay. We might come back to canola.
Okay.
Because I think that creates a little bit of controversy online anyway. I'm not sure why, but we can double click on that in a moment. So that's the DASH diet, the Nordic diet, the Mediterranean diet. What other dietary patterns has your work looked at?
So portfolio is the other one that we talked about. And I can just give a little bit of info of what that is in case people aren't familiar with it. So it is a cholesterol lowering diet. It was developed to lower LDL cholesterol specifically, and it's based on a dietary pattern of foods that all have health claims for cholesterol reduction. And these health claims are in the US or Canada or in Europe. And it has a number of pillars that we call. So first, it's low in saturated fat and dietary cholesterol. And then you add foods on top. So that includes plant protein, specifically soy protein. It's high in viscous fiber sources. So that's a type of soluble fiber. And this includes things like barley, oats, psyllium, okra, eggplant, and berries. And then it's also high in nuts and plant sterols, and also plant monounsaturated fat sources. So again, sometimes canola oil or olive oil or avocado or high oleic sunflower oil.